Hello learners, a very warm welcome to this video lecture in which we are going to be talking about Gandhi's views on Earth, humankind and human ecology. My name is Dr. Shubhangi Vaidya and I teach at the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies, IGNOU. What are the aims and objectives of today's talk? So, what we are going to try to do is to begin with understanding Gandhi's critique of the Western paradigm of industrial development and the exploitation of the earth. We will also discuss Gandhi's holistic perspective on humanity and human values. And then we'll discuss Gandhi's views and some of the important practices that he incorporated in his life with regard to the conservation of nature. Today's talk will give you an idea of some of Gandhi's very important contributions towards ecological and environmental thinking, which are more relevant today than they have ever been at any point of time, when the earth is facing so much of natural calamity, so many changes on account of climate change and so on and so forth, and where everybody is very concerned about the long-term sustainability of the path of development on which the whole world has embarked. So at this very critical juncture in the history of the world and in the history of our societies, looking towards Gandhi for very relevant and very important ideas is the need of the hour. Gandhi's approach towards development, as we have discussed in the earlier talk also, was a very important critique of the path that Western industrial societies had approached towards economic growth and development and the kind of impact that it had upon nature and the environment. So let's quickly go over it again. So as you know, the model of industrial growth and development also fueled and strengthened colonialism and the exploitation of natural as well as human resources. And as we know, Gandhi was strongly opposed to this. In fact, the entire history of the freedom struggle is rooted in this notion of the way in which our natural as well as our human resources were exploited by a foreign power. Gandhi therefore advocated a non-exploitative economy. So what is a non-exploitative economy? This is an economy which does not really depend upon conquest and mastery over nature. It is an economy which is based on a path which is lit by truth and non-violence. Non-violence towards nature as well as non-violence towards other human beings. We'll discuss this a little bit more in the later part of the talk. The goal of this non-violent and non-exploitative economy is not just pure material benefit, but also the advancement of humanity, the strengthening of moral character and personality. In other words, self-development. So it is not just the development of the economy or the development of material resources. It is also the development of character, of personality, of moral fiber, and these are the things which really make a society and a civilization great. Gandhi did, of course, recognize the importance of the economic aspect of life. Without the economy, without the basic necessities of existence, life itself would not be possible. So while he fully recognized the importance of the economic aspect of life, he rejected the view that economic activity should be exploitative in nature. And there is a beautiful quote from Young India, Gandhi's very important work, which I would just like to read out. So Gandhi says, according to me, the economic constitution of India, and for the matter of that, the world, should be such that no one under it should suffer from the want of food and clothing. These should be freely available to us all, as God's air and water are or ought to be. They should not be made a vehicle of traffic for the exploitation of others. This monopolization by any country, nation, or group of persons would be unjust. The neglect of this principle is the cause of destitution that we witness today, not only in this unhappy land, but in other parts of the world too. So I think this is an extremely important and extremely profound insight that everybody, every individual, no matter how big or small, how high or low, no matter what their birth or station, all should have access to the basic resources which we are entitled to as human beings living on this planet. These resources which, such as air, water, natural resources, which belong to one and all. And when these are colonized, or when these become the property of a select group of people, a select group of powerful people, who then use their power to deprive the poorer sections of these rights, this is what leads to destruction, and this is exactly what Gandhi was witnessing in British India, which he fought for all his life, which he fought against all his life. So we all know that the worldview on which the contemporary economic paradigm is based, it is a worldview which is based upon conquest of the environment, on transforming the environment for human good. It is basically an anthropocentric, putting human beings and human needs and human desires at the center. However, we see that with the kind of environmental degradation, the kind of negative impacts of climate change and so on that we are witnessing in the world around us, an alternative perspective or an alternative paradigm is also emerging. And briefly, some of the important aspects of this new paradigm, which bears a very, very strong resonance with Gandhian ideals, let's just have a quick look at them. So, to begin with, the good life. What is the good life? The good life is not just a materially good life in which you have, we are able to enjoy a very high level of consumption. So the good life is a combination of both the material as well as the spiritual, the personal as well as the social, the inner as well as the outer. So it is a balance of all these various aspects of life. This alternative paradigm also places emphasis on the personal and the community, the individual as a part and a parcel of the larger universe and the scheme of things. Now, this is quite different from the very, very individual-centric pattern or paradigm of development that has come from the West, that it is the individual and the individual's needs, wants, desires, which are at the center of existence, and the individual will do everything in his or her power to achieve these desires. So the alternative paradigm looks at the individual as part of a community, as part of a larger network which involves both the natural as well as the social. Each person must take responsibility for the well-being of the world. So every act that I do has an impact upon somebody else and has an impact upon the well-being of the world in general. And this will enable high levels of decentralization and freedom at the local level, as well as a sustainable harmony at the global level. So, a very interesting term has been used, from a lifeboat ethic to a spaceship ethic, that the earth is like a spaceship in which all of us are working together to keep this spaceship afloat. Let's come now to Gandhi's holistic philosophy. What were Gandhi's views on the way in which human beings, nature, society and politics were all intertwined with each other? So Gandhi's basic philosophy on humankind and earth was influenced by the Vedic idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. In other words, the world is one family. He drew upon this very, very important idea to basically look at the interconnectedness, the webs of interrelationship, the webs of mutual dependence that all of us are bound into. So the world is one family. I am responsible for everyone in the world, and everyone in the world is responsible for me. So unless we think of each other as being part of this enormous network, in this huge interconnected family, we will really not be able to work towards self-development and towards human development. So another very important and very, very, a heart-touching quote that we can just look at from Gandhi. I could not be leading a religious life unless I identified myself with the whole of mankind. And that I could not do unless I took part in politics. The whole gamut of man's activities today constitutes an indivisible whole. You cannot divide social, economic, political, and purely religious work into watertight compartments. I do not know any religion apart from human activity. It provides a moral basis to all other activities, which they would otherwise lack, reducing life to a maze of sound and fury signifying nothing. So you see that the social, the economic, the political, and the moral are deeply intertwined in Gandhi's philosophy. If you just think over some of the important, landmark events in the freedom struggle, you will see the kind of emphasis that Gandhi placed on morality, on good. It was not just an instrumental, movement, that this was a goal that had to be achieved at any cost. The moral dimensions were always very, very much at the forefront of Gandhi's ideology and Gandhi's activism. To continue with Gandhi's holistic philosophy, we see the emphasis on truth and truthfulness was at the core of his philosophy. Gandhi saw the universe as a function of truth and as a function of the law of dharma. So without truthfulness, without honesty, without the ability to introspect and look very, very honestly and impartially at what was the truth, there could be really no dharma, there could be really no progress. And the same universal truth that Gandhi spoke of, he urged us to look for it in every creature on the planet, thus reinforcing the nature that all human beings are interconnected and one family. So there is one universal truth that binds all of us, that makes all of us equally important in the larger scheme of things. As you all know, another fulcrum of Gandhi's thinking, one of his core ideas, was that of ahimsa or non-violence. Now we know that in its negative form, it means not injuring any living being by body or mind. In its positive form, ahimsa means the greatest love and the greatest charity towards all, and for all followers of ahimsa to love their enemy and bear no hatred or ill will towards them. So ahimsa is not just what we don't have to do. It's not just that we should not hurt anybody. It is also the active engagement, the active love to love one's enemy, to bear no hatred and ill will towards anybody. And this is much, much harder, calls for much more self-discipline than the negative dimension of ahimsa. Sarvodaya and Antyodaya, these two very, very important principles were at the heart of Gandhi's philosophy also. Sarvodaya meaning the good or the welfare of all. But the welfare of all should also take care of the welfare of the last person, Antyodaya, the weakest, the poorest, the most marginalized person also should be the recipient of welfare, should also be benefited by whatever society does. So these two ideas of Sarvodaya as well as Antyodaya are very, very important and really brings to light the holistic nature of Gandhi's philosophy and thinking. So in his opinion, in a Sarvodaya social order, people will be bound together by love and compassion, goodwill and understanding. Trusteeship and non-possession was also a very, very important aspect of this ideology. So anyone who had a lot, somebody who was rich, was not just somebody who would enjoy his or her riches on their own, but in a sense would be a trustee, would be somebody who would then use their resources to take care of those who are not so well resourced, who are not having as much as the other person. So all things of the world, according to him, must be enjoyed by renunciation. The rich should become trustees of their surplus wealth for the good of society, since society is an extended family. And this is such an important precept. For us today, life or the good life or success in life is all about acquisition, whereas Gandhi's philosophy emphasized renunciation, giving up, reducing one's possessions, reducing the tendency to accumulate, to have, to grab. And really this is at the core of environmental thinking also. All environmentalists say that because we are in this mode of acquiring more and more, of consuming more and more, we are exhausting Earth's finite resources. Another very, very important aspect that Gandhi emphasized was respect for and uplift of women and working towards an egalitarian society. Now do remember that at the time when Gandhi was doing his work, the status of women was not by no means the way it is today. Women were in a fairly miserable situation, and the work that Gandhi did by incorporating women in all the various activities that he undertook played a very, very vital role in giving them or working towards an equal status towards women. We've spoken so far about what Gandhi viewed the ideal society as, or the good society as, a society which was based on the welfare of all as well as the welfare of the last or the least or the most impoverished or marginalized person. Let's see now his views on nature. Now Gandhi treasured nature and argued for the conservation of biodiversity because, according to him, a human being has no power to create life. He therefore has no right to destroy life. And the famous statement of his that is quoted again and again everywhere about the earth providing enough for everyone's needs but not for everyone's greed. So Gandhi's entire philosophy towards nature was geared in this perception of nature as being something that had a validity, a life, an integrity. And that because we cannot create life, because human beings are not in a position to create life, we have absolutely no right to destroy life either. The more nature is overpowered, the more we try to conquer or the more we try to dominate nature, the more alienated humans will become from nature. And when we are alienated from nature, we also then become alienated from ourselves, because we are also part and parcel of the natural order. We are also part and parcel of nature. So the more we try to conquer, the more we try to dominate, the more we try to, impose our will upon nature, this then leads to us imposing our will on those who are weaker than us and leads to an inegalitarian and an exploitative social order, the kind that was there at the time when Gandhi did his work, the kind of industrial development that took place in the West, which then also led to colonial domination in countries like ours. So this entire drive to dominate the earth, to dominate resources, and then to dominate other people is very much a part of this entire ideology of dominance, of conquest, which Gandhi repudiated and which Gandhi challenged and contested and provided an alternative path for. So the true self can be discovered only through the search for truth, following the path of non-violence. Let's quickly look at some of the important practices that Gandhi and his followers really put into play or really adopted towards conservation of natural resources. Now we all know that in the ashrams in which Gandhi lived, whether it began with the Tolstoy farm in South Africa to the ashrams that he established in India, the way in which the residents of the ashram under the leadership and under the inspiration of Gandhi led their lives was really very, very different from the kind of consumption practices or the kind of lives of luxury or the kinds of lives of using a lot of natural resources, using people to do one's work for oneself, etc. So it was in complete contrast to the other kind of exploitative lifestyle that we see all around us even today. So it's well worth revisiting some of these practices and drawing inspiration from them for our own lives and practices today. So the first and the most important was the limitation of wants by leading a simple and frugal life. And this was also accompanied by dignity of labor. So do your own work yourself. Walk instead of taking a vehicle. That will save on fuel, as well as it will help you to become healthier and more fit. So these two aspects of limiting your wants, restricting our consumption patterns, leading a life of simplicity, and the dignity of labor, doing our work ourselves rather than employing people to do our work for us. And remember, the dignity of labor is also very, very strongly related to the idea of caste in the Indian context. And this is also something that Gandhi fought for all his life, for the dignity of everybody and for the abolition of untouchability. Sanitation also, the sanitation practices that if one takes a look at the way in which ashram life was organized, the recycling of waste, pristine cleanliness, these were some of the hallmarks of the Gandhian way of life. Recycling every little bit of items that were used, making the most, composting, not throwing things, not wasting things. In fact, it is often said that the way Gandhiji used to use all kinds of pieces of used paper for his writing. He never threw paper. He would collect paper and write on, make sure that all his writings, and he was a prolific writer, as we all know, his writings were always on paper which he reused. And this was an extremely endearing trait of his. Another very important aspect that Gandhi emphasized on was vegetarianism. So according to him, eating the flesh of animals was a kind of a violence that was done on them. And he laid a great deal of emphasis on vegetarianism, on organic farming, on cultivation practices which made the maximum use of organic and natural methods. Homespun and village enterprises. So the entire economic thinking that Gandhi propagated was based upon self-sufficiency of the Indian village. And towards that, homespun or making of khadi was a very, very important aspect of his agenda. And khadi and the charkha became emblems not just of self-sufficiency and village enterprise, but they really became emblematic of the entire national movement, as you all know very well. Nature therapy was also something that Gandhi propagated, curing illnesses through the use of natural methods, through naturopathy, through using plant and basically using plant and other items that were easily obtained from nature to cure sicknesses. And also, he laid a great deal of emphasis on yoga and prayer. Yoga and prayer would enable individuals to look within themselves, to view their own inner life, to calm their minds, to enable them to become one with the cosmic order that Gandhi always spoke about. He spoke about the unity of the world. He spoke about the unity of human beings. He spoke about the oneness of human beings with their natural world. So yoga and prayer were means of self-reflection, were means of introspection, which would aid this unity, which would aid this oneness with the world. Let's look finally at some of the important contributions of Gandhi, which have had really a very, very profound impact upon contemporary thinkers as well as thinkers of his times. So his critique of Western anthropocentric economic growth and the exploitation of nature inspired many, many thinkers and activists. One of his contemporaries, Albert Schweitzer, said, "Man has lost the capacity to foresee and to forestall. He will end by destroying the earth." Now, this is almost a prophetic kind of a statement, to foresee the damage that we are doing and to forestall, meaning to stop or to prevent the damage that we are doing. And the very, very, apt warning that we will end up by destroying the earth if we do not foresee the damage we are doing and we do not forestall it. Another very important author, E.F. Schumacher, who wrote the famous book, Small is Beautiful, and he strongly drew his ideas from some of Gandhi's, philosophy, from Gandhi's ideology. He said, "The cultivation and expansion of needs is the antithesis of wisdom. It is also the antithesis of freedom and peace. Now, this is such a simple thing. The more we expand our needs, the more we expand our desires, it is in fact going against basic wisdom. And it is also creating situations of competition, of fighting for scarce natural resources, of pitting one human being against another, of societies clashing, of nations clashing. So the more we expand our needs, we are in fact creating a situation where freedom, where peace, where wisdom are completely contradicted. And we are creating a regime of destruction, of mutual enmity, and a completely conflictual kind of a world. And really this prediction or this statement, what the kind of situation the world finds itself in contemporary times, really reflects these statements. The relevance of Gandhi's ideas, I started out by saying that Gandhi's ideas are extremely relevant, and I think it is very important for all of us to introspect upon the relevance of his ideas in the contemporary time. Reflect upon our individual acts and what kind of impact they have upon the world around us. Reflect upon our thoughts. Reflect upon the way in which we use resources. Reflect upon the way in which we deal with other members of society, particularly those who are in a weaker and a more marginalized situation than us. So I think this kind of thought, reflection, and of course action are the need of the hour in contemporary times, where the world finds itself in a very, very critical phase, where the ecology, where the environment, and where the place of human beings on this planet is being discussed, is being debated, is being rethought. And also, if one looks at the environmental movements in our own country, you find that people like Sundarlal Bahuguna, people like Mr. Bhatt, all these people who are at the forefront of movements such as Chipko and so on, these are people who drew very, very strongly from Gandhi. We see that environmental thinking today draws upon many of the ideas, many of the precepts that were actually articulated by Gandhi. So in that sense, we can say without a shadow of a doubt that Gandhi was a visionary in terms of his environmental, in terms of his ecological thinking. Thank you so much.